Hey guys, today we're going to be checking out two different things. First, we'll take a look at the Meze 105 Silva, and then we're going to check out this, the Luxsin X9. We have a lot to talk about, so let's get started. Okay, so I will have to move through this review kind of quickly because we have a lot of information we have to cover. I will, however, make sure and try to touch on the most important aspects of both the 105 Silva and the X9. So we'll start with the 105 Silva. In terms of build quality, design, comfort, as I've come to expect from Meze, this checks all the boxes. It has an open back design and it uses a 50mm dynamic driver. The design is absolutely beautiful. Again, as I've come to expect from Meze, looks and feels like a high quality headphone, better than I would expect for the $499 asking price. The cup incorporates, as you can see, real hard wood, and this is hand polished walnut. It has kind of a vintage vibe going on. It has a spring steel headband, similar to what you see with the 105 Air and the 99 Classics. And again, comfort is very good for my head. The suede pads are very thick and plush, so they're very soft. And because the cups tilt and swivel a little bit, I've had no problem getting a nice comfortable fit and a good seal around my ears. It also comes with this pretty decent protective case. You then get a nice braided 3.5 terminated cable, and you got a little Type-C dongle with a 3.5 connection. So the design is beautiful, the build and the general structure is very robust, and ergonomics are on point. And we're just gonna go straight into sound. So as for the sound of the Meze 105 Silva, Meze has opted for a little more of a mid-forward tuning with this particular set, and it is combined with some lower mid-warmth and a little bit of a mid-bass bump. So there is a little bit of coloration going on, and of course, this lands kind of right in between the 105 Air and the 109 Pro in terms of pricing. It's actually only $100 more than the 105 Air and $300 less than the 109 Pro. However, I would say that this is a pretty big jump up as far as its general tuning and performance from the 105 Air. And in my opinion, despite the higher price of the 109 Pro, I don't really feel like it's a big jump up in overall sound performance from the 105 Silva. So to me, the 105 Silva is probably the best value of the three models. And I kind of feel that way about the design and again, the build as well. It just looks and sounds like a better headphone than what you might typically expect at this price point. As far as its overall bass presentation, again, this is a little more mid-bass focused. And while there is sub-bass presence, generally the overall bass presentation is kind of dominated by the mid-bass. So kick drums are pretty punchy sounding, and the emphasis seems to be focused around dynamic impact as opposed to sub-bass rumble. Of course, that's very common with open back headphones, and that extra mid-bass energy does stay pretty consistent again as you move into the lower mid-range. So along with that dynamic presentation comes a little bit of warmth, some richness as well, but the quality of the bass is without question a step up from the 105 Air in terms of texture, definition, and they've actually done a really good job maintaining control out of the mid bass into the lower mids, and just a really good job avoiding any kind of bass bleed into the mid range. Now you also have good clarity in the upper mids, but there is a little bit of a dip right before that, and I didn't notice anything as far as it having a negative impact on instrument and vocal naturalness, so it doesn't seem to affect anything. It's fairly inconsequential. The energy does definitely pick up rather quickly as you approach the upper mids, and of course, that's going to push vocals a bit more forward in the presentation, certainly enough to cut through and kind of help balance out some of that mid bass and low mid energy. So generally you have good vocal clarity. That said, when comparing the balance between the upper mids, and I hope this makes sense, the upper mids and the treble, my attention is actually being pulled towards the upper treble because there's just a ton of energy above 10K. And of course, that is going to give the 105 Silva a really nice, airy, and kind of an open presentation. And it's also going to bring a little bit of shimmer to that presentation as well. However, for some reason, the interaction, whatever's happening between the upper treble energy and the upper mid-range energy, it's throwing something off for me. And it is causing the treble or any instruments that land in the treble, like cymbals, even some higher stringed instruments, to come across as just a little bit unnatural and even maybe a little bright to my ears. That said, it's not super noticeable in most tracks. There were only maybe a few instances where I actually noticed it. And again, you do still have a lot of upper mid-range energy. So when you combine all of that energy in the top half, it can lean a little bit bright sometimes. So just something to keep in mind if you're kind of sensitive to that. Detail and resolution is quite good thanks to that energy up top. Soundstage is about average width, I would say, although imaging and layering is above average in my opinion for this price point. Overall, I do feel like its technical performance is really good for this price point. As for whether or not this gets my recommendation, again, like the 105 Air and the 109 Pro, this does bring a little bit of coloration to its presentation, and it does stray outside, I guess you could say, out of my tuning preference somewhat. That said, there are plenty of times where I've been wanting that more engaging or fun listening experience, and I actually found myself making a pretty strong connection with this set. Now, the reality is there are some pretty incredible headphones out there at this price point, or even less, like the HD 6XX. Plus, you can also pick up the Aria Stealth for around the same price, and I also think the Moondrop Para 2 might edge this out a little just in terms of pure tuning. Although the Moondrop Para 2 cannot touch this in terms of the aesthetics, build quality, and comfort. Bottom line though, technically, in terms of pure tuning, if you are looking for something a little more neutral, there are better options out there. But if you are looking to add a little flavor and you like, again, having a little diversity in your collection, you don't mind adding some color to it, or if you are looking for just a more engaging headphone, this does check all of those boxes. It does that really well, and it doesn't really get too crazy or go too far. It's still a very natural set. And again, the bass quality is really, really good, as is its technical performance. And again, not even to mention, again, this is definitely one of the best designed and best built sets within this price range. All right, let's go ahead and move on to the Luxsin X9, and I'm gonna change camera positions here. Okay, so the reason I've moved over to this side of my desk is because this is kind of where I've had the X9, where I've had it set up for quite a while now, and I've been using it as a DAC preamp. So it's feeding my Matrix Audio Element P2, the subwoofer output from the Luxsin X9 feeding the 3000 micro, and then this is powering my LS50 Metas. And I've also had this at one point, I did have this in my main listening room. But anyways, let's go ahead and just go through this as quickly as possible. I may not be able to cover everything, but I will cover as much as I can. I do want to touch on some of the features that I found useful for me, and then we'll talk about its sound. So the Luxsin brand it's kind of new, I guess you could say. It is actually a sub-brand of Eversolo. And if you are familiar with Eversolo's products, you'll know that generally they are of higher quality, and the build, the design certainly of this certainly reflects that, as does its feature set. So while this is a little pricier at $1,100, the quality of craftsmanship on the outside and inside did seem to for sure meet and even really surpass my expectations. It's just an absolutely beautiful piece. Everything just looks and feels really, really nice, and it has more features than I even have time to cover. So the X9 primarily, again, it functions primarily as a headphone amplifier, and that's mainly what I've been using it for. And a lot of the features, the built-in features, are centered around that. But it can, again, it also functions as a preamp if you want to incorporate it with your home audio system like I have. And if you look at the front here, of course, you have your XLR and 4.4 balanced headphone outputs. You have a 6.35 single-ended output as well. You have a 4-inch touchscreen display, and this gives you access, I mean, man, to so much stuff. It's just ridiculous. But of course, you also have access to your basic controls and basic settings like your display settings, viewing options, including the ability to choose between different view meters, gain settings, channel balance, filters, and just a ton of other stuff that I'll have to come back to in a little bit. You then have a volume wheel, and this uses a fully balanced R2R volume control circuit. Then you have a power button. And then on the back of the device, you have plenty of input and output options, both digital and analog. You have balanced XLR and RCA analog outputs. You have your RCA coaxial, optical, and USB inputs, an HDMI ARC/eARC. And again, this does have a dedicated subwoofer output along with your subwoofer controls, so you can properly integrate the subwoofer into your home audio setup, like a crossover, attenuation slope, gain, output type, so stereo or mono, in case you want to use it as, again, in case you want to use this as a DAC and preamp. And it also has Bluetooth and Wi-Fi capability. As for the DAC section, this uses dual flagship AK4499s, and those are combined with some AK4191 DAC chips, and it is fully balanced. The amp section uses a combination of OPA 1612s and TPA 6120s. And as for power output, this is going to give you up to 3 watts and 9.7 volts RMS at 32 ohms. And then with a 300 ohm load, you're going to get about 920 milliwatts, or basically 1 watt, and then 16.7 volts RMS. And again, that's with a 300 ohm load. And that is out of the balanced outputs, so it had absolutely no problem at all driving my HD800S. Another interesting feature is its auto impedance detection, which allows the X9 to determine the appropriate gain settings for your particular headphones or IEMs. Now, in regards to its sound performance, in terms of power output, while the X9 will definitely be able to basically power anything you can throw at it, I do still wish they would have maybe upped the power output a little bit more in order to compete with, say, the DNA Alpha Pro, which that outputs up to 6 watts, and then the FIO K19, which again, that's 8 watts. That said, though, again, it handled all of my planar sets very well. It drove my HD800S very nicely as well. So again, you can use this in bypass mode, and the impressions I'm going to be sharing with you right now are in bypass mode with headphones. So again, that's without any of the sound enhancements, so no EQ, no soundstage enhancements or anything. With the X9 in bypass mode using headphones, its sound was what I would consider to be pretty linear and uncolored. Now, I should clarify, this is not a discrete amp. It uses op amps. So when I was comparing this with, for example, the DNA Alpha Pro or the FIO K9 Pro, which both of those do have discrete amplification, and they both did seem to deliver a little bit of a fuller, more natural, and maybe even they're a little more resolving presentation. And the X9 struck me as just a little less engaging. For example, if I put a track on that had really good impact and punch and dynamics, like Polyphia's Playing God, for example, the X9 seemed to present it in a slightly more polite manner, I guess you could say. So the engagement level I was used to experiencing with that track. It seemed to be just a little less engaging, I guess. And I don't know if I would necessarily consider this to be bright in its overall presentation, because the upper frequencies did seem to have a pretty good control. They sounded natural. However, there was something about its presentation that, depending on the track, sometimes my attention was kind of pulled a little more towards the top half. So again, I don't know if I would call it bright, but it did maybe seem a little bit leaner in the bottom half. Detail levels were maybe not the best I've heard at this price point, but certainly still very good. Instrument layering, separation were also pretty good, not great. Soundstage was good. And again, this is in bypass mode, so without any sound enhancements. And then of course I also tested for background noise using my very, very sensitive 2020 Andromedas, and it was about as quiet as any device I've ever tested. So no issues there at all. But I guess bottom line, in bypass mode, using it as a headphone amplifier, its overall performance was good. Again, maybe not the best that I've heard at this price point, but certainly good. But you might want to kind of approach this with the mindset that you're also paying for preamp functionality and a ton of pretty unique customization features. And again, these features include crossfeed controls, tone controls, stereo width enhancement effect, EQ presets, plus custom EQ presets for specific headphones. And from what I understand, they're also planning on adding and updating that database as new headphones come out. And it also has an app that you can download that gives you access to many of those same controls and features. And now, if you are familiar with my take on EQ and sound enhancements, you'll know that generally I don't usually use them, although I can certainly appreciate and acknowledge the added flexibility and even the fun, I guess, aspect that it can bring to an overall listening experience for me and for many of you. That said, the X9 took me a little by surprise, and I found myself much more intrigued and impressed with, again, not only how intuitive and expansive these enhancements were, but also how good everything still sounded and how good the performance of the X9 was while I was using those enhancements, especially the crosstalk feature. And it actually took the whole fun level up a notch for me. And that's, again, I think that's what kind of set the X9 apart for me from the competition. And again, considering its price, $1,100, I think it's important to take all of that into consideration. So yes, if you are strictly looking for the absolute best sound performance for your money for this price point, and you don't care about those features, then there are better options out there. However, if you do still want very good sound performance and also want the flexibility of being able to use it both as a headphone amplifier and DAC preamp with your home system, which is again exactly how I've been using it. Plus you have some very well implemented preset EQs for specific headphones. You've got the crosstalk, the stereo width enhancements. The build quality and the design is absolutely just excellent. All of that together is what I feel makes the X9 special, again, in my opinion. And I have to say, I already love this hobby, and I'm always having fun, but this actually did take that fun level up a notch. In any case, I think that does it for this video. If you are new to the Gazaudio channel and you like our videos, please take a minute and hit that subscribe button. And if you want to go a step further, you can also support us through our Patreon. I'll make sure and leave a link in the description. Thank you guys so much for taking the time to watch this review. Please like this video, please share this video, please comment on this video. I hope you have an awesome day.